finally, after 2 months of this, my daughter, my 10-year-old, comes out to the porch and she taps on my shoulder and she says, "Mommy, you're Jen Kem. It's time to wake up now."
We're all about turning a crappy situation into something positive.
$250,000 of credit card
I
debt.
still remember the day when no one turned up.
Throw it in the garbage and start from scratch.
I could give myself a chance, so I started something.
I mean, I think that counts as from poop to gold.
Our sponsor for this episode is our 14-day video script challenge.
Yes, we are sponsoring our own show.
Yes, we are.
Welcome back to From Poop to Gold. I'm Benton Crane, your co-host and the CEO of Harmon Brothers. Today, I have a very special guest with us here on the show. I am joined by Jennifer Kem. Welcome to the show, Jen.
Hey, Benton, thanks for having me.
So Jennifer is a brand strategist and a marketing expert, and she is the creator of Master Brand. Jen, tell us what Master Brand is.
So Master Brand is our methodology at our company, Master Brand Institute, and it's a campus for small business owners where we help them get seen, heard, and paid for being themselves. And it's located in the San Francisco Bay Area and also in Honolulu, Hawaii. So I get to run my company from both places.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah, it's hard life.
You poor thing.
I know. Very grateful, though.
Well, we're so excited to have you on with us today. So, of course, this is the Poop to Gold podcast. We're going to be diving into your Poop to Gold journey and finding out more about that. But before we do that, let's talk just a little bit more about that methodology behind Master Brand so that our listeners can really understand what it is that you're currently doing before we dive into that backstory of how you got here.
That's great. Well, Master Brand is all about taking what bigger brands that influence us all, because I think for small businesses specifically who we help, one of the things that is a disconnect is when you're an entrepreneur or a small business owner, you think you're on your own completely, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you also forget how important structure that came from maybe your previous career in corporate or some other place, which a lot of entrepreneurs, or many, have, and also bigger brands influence us. So for example, I always tell people, companies like Starbucks, right? Mm-hmm. How can you take the best of what they do to create a brand that's so sticky, so influential, and to create a way to make your audience feel like they want to be with you? What Starbucks is, they're not a coffee company. They sell coffee, but that's the commodity part of their business. What they've created is community. They've created what their mission is, which is to create the third place. And I'm not a big fan of Starbucks coffee. In fact, I'm a coffee snob. But as a brand strategist, I really love what they've been able to do to take their one little shop in Seattle, Washington, and they had a vision. They had a vision to expand and create a place where people would gather. And that was their number one goal. And they succeeded at being the third place. The first place is home, second place is work, third place is Starbucks, right? And they've also launched a ton of entrepreneurs and small businesses through that gathering. And so my point is that Master Brand Method takes those case studies and ideas from bigger brands and right sizes them for entrepreneurs, and then puts their stories and their intellectual property and their skills, talents, gifts into the mix so that they can be more impactful and influential in a high integrity way for the audiences that they're attracting. So that's really what the Master Brand Method is, and that's my true joy. And once you hear my Poop to Gold story, you'll see that it was a very long, winding yarn to get here.
For sure.
But that's the company that I run now.
Amazing. So you're taking some of the lessons of the great brands, the household brands that we all know and love. We most of these brands, we trust them, we remember them, and so we take what they're doing well, and then you apply it to us little guys, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, we'll come back to that, but let's go back in time. Every successful person has had to overcome some serious things to reach their level of success. I want to hear about, if you have to look back over your life, what was the kind of the quintessential poop moment that just stands out above them all, where you just faced insurmountable obstacles, you felt like you couldn't overcome it, you felt downtrodden, you just didn't know what the future held. Take us back to one of those moments.
I love the question, because even as you ask it, I can feel and see myself in the moment. So thank you. There are a lot. I think everybody has obviously a lot of poop to gold moments, but to get specific around the big defining one for me, the one that brought me to the life I have now, that truly feels like a life of my own design, which is what I always really wanted, was back in 2006. I was a very successful marketing executive for one of the biggest companies in the world, Verizon. And I honestly, a lot of people don't know this about me now because I help so many entrepreneurs and small business owners, but I had no desire at all to have my own business, Benton, at all. In fact, I thought I was shooting for the corner office. I didn't think I was necessarily going to do that at Verizon, which was a huge company. But I imagined that I would become like maybe the next Sheryl Sandberg, who's, you know, the CEO of Facebook, or Marissa Mayer, who is the CEO or was the CEO of Yahoo, and came from Google. I imagined that I would become a high-tech CEO, and that was my goal. Now, early on in my career, I got some really great advice from a mentor who I asked when I was 22 years old, green and hungry, if I want to have your life. And she had a life that I thought looked really great. She was 33 years old. She had a husband she looked like she liked. And she had 2 kids, and she was the head of the company I worked for. And I was 22 years old and said, what should I do if I want to have a life like yours? And her house was beautiful. And I just thought, okay. And she looked happy. And she was really sharp and smart. And she could really hold a room. And she said, you know, the key to moving up the chain fast is to take all the projects that people don't like. And it was, and honestly, I will say that advice, moving forward to my big poop moments, I needed to give that context, is really what led me to today. So anyway, fast forward to 2006. From that moment, I had just led one of the company's biggest launches, and to this day,
still at Verizon.
Yes, at Verizon. This product that was launched, which is IPTV, TV, like basically what is trying to kill the cable company.
Yep.
It's billions of dollars of revenue today. And I launched that product back in 2006. And to launch a product of that magnitude and try to manage literally hundreds of people who need to buy into the idea, it was the greatest leadership opportunity for me that I ever had in corporate. And
can you give me some context on the timing? When did Netflix switch from DVDs to streaming, just so I can understand kind of how this relates?
Yeah, so that actually happened in DVDs to streaming. That happened in the early 2000s for Netflix. But then what happened is the telephone companies like Verizon, and they don't consider this a telephone company anymore. It sounds so old. That's what they were.
Yep.
They were known as telephone. They wanted to become technology companies, internet protocol companies. And so Verizon specifically, they also wanted to compete with the cable companies for streaming. Great too, because they saw that opportunity. And so that's the background. So you had a Netflix, which was a disruptor because they were moving from, basically killing Blockbuster, right? And moving into streaming. And then you had the cable companies that owned television communication for us, right?
Yep.
And then what the Verizons and the AT&Ts of the world wanted was to get into the internet protocol business to stream TV as an option. And so that's kind of that's what the industry was.
Got it.
Yeah. So I ran that project for 2 years, and in 2006 we launched. So I was running that project from 2004 to 2006, and it was wildly successful. I mean, obviously there's always, again, trying to navigate that and that many people is a lot, but I have to say that we hit our goals and we did it. And and back to the advice I'd gotten 10 years prior to that, I thought, great, I've shown my abilities. I have great relationships in the company. I'm going to get the promotion I'm looking for next. I was already a marketing VP, but there was a position to become a senior VP. And it was like, okay, great, I'm moving up the food chain. And within a week of me getting I got a little award. I still have it to this day, this little acrylic plaque. At the same time, my colleague, who's a great guy, he actually got the promotion to this role that I was gunning gunning for by taking on that really hard project. And it was in that moment, Benton, that of course I got a little frustrated. I was angry, to be honest with you. But
so you've like spent 2 years putting your blood, sweat, and tears into this project specifically because you wanted this new role.
I barely even saw my kids for those 2 years. I had two young daughters at the time. I put my entire all into it. And literally the guy who got the job, who we're still friends to this day, he actually got a pass the whole time because he got to do the day-to-day work and I had to do like the big lift, and then he got the promotion. And I even worked at the company longer. And I realized that in that moment of frustration that I didn't have control of my life. And this job was not going to give me anything. I needed to design what I wanted my life to look like. And so that moment is actually not my poop moment. It was my awakening moment that led to my poop moment. Because I basically took I created a 9-month exit plan to leave the company because it wasn't responsible for me to just quit. So a lot of people hear the entrepreneurial story of like, just jump off the cliff. I had 2 young people to take care of. Okay. And so I knew that I needed to create a little bit of discipline, even though I was eager, to leave. It was like, I just need to create a little bit of discipline. This is another thing I tell entrepreneurs today. It's like, if you worked in corporate, you created some disciplines, apply them to your business, Anyway, I left and I started a company. And you would think I would do consulting or something that was in alignment with my skill set. Actually, I didn't, Benton. I started a women's underwear company.
Okay.
And a retail store, even though I was working in corporate and consulting. And the reason I did that is because one of the things I'm known for is smelling the money. And I knew that if I was going to start a company or start a business, a small business, I needed to get where I knew there would be a market for it. And in Hawaii, where I was living, there was no place for women to buy underwear. And I noticed flying back and forth from Dallas that every time I would get back to Hawaii, there was one thing I would notice, and that was a pink bag. Women that was their carry-on. And it was a Victoria's Secret bag. And the reason is you couldn't buy underwear in Hawaii. So I'm like, that's what I'm going to do. So I mortgaged my house, opened my first retail store, did not think I was going to expand it, honestly. I just wanted to make good money and have freedom, which I thought was freedom. But if you open retail and even what's going on in the world when there's a recession or anything like that, hard. Retail's hard. But I was really good at building brands. So bottom line is in 18 months, so between 2006 when I left and 2008, we were doing $10 million in business. I had opened and expanded more stores. I was signing leases left and right, looking into acquiring commercial property. We're crushing it. So that's.
Did you have an e-commerce arm too, or was that all retail?
That was towards the end, and too late. So we're getting to my poop moment because it was mainly retail. 90% of it was retail. I would take phone orders and we had a website, but it wasn't like we had turned on the e-commerce engine, right? We had ways to do that. The bottom line is 2008 happens, right? And I'm so focused on expansion. My financial advisor was like, we need to pump brakes. Something's happening in the economy. And, I think you're doing well. Let's reserve our cash. Let's not build more. And this is one of my biggest mistakes. And I say to this day is that I didn't listen. Because I did lean on what my strengths were, which is expansion, branding, launching, building, right? And I think that I don't regret that happening because it's created a way smarter person in me. But at the time, he was like, look, this is not your area of expertise. Leave it to me. Let's handle it this way. And I didn't trust anybody but myself. That's the thing is I was like, I did this. I'm responsible for this. I got to do it. I have 2 young kids. This has to work.
So let's pause for just a second, Jen. So for context here, this is a retail-based business, which is very heavily invested into real estate space for these retail spaces, right?
Lots of overhead, right?
And real estate is what got killed in the 2008 collapse. So
two things. Two things. Real estate and retail. Those are the 2 industries got completely killed, and that's the business I was in.
Got it.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. Okay, I just wanted to kind of give that context for our listeners. So let's dive right back in.
Yeah, so basically it happened very fast. That's the thing with recessions is you think you know, and then it's literally like you're doing very well, and then the next day nobody's coming to your store. Nobody was buying cars. Nobody was buying houses. Nobody was buying anything, right? This was 2008. And for any of you listening who were part of that time, you know what the economy was under. It was under siege. And I didn't have enough cash to keep my doors open. I thought I did. I had a lot of inventory. I had a lot of assets on paper. But what I didn't have was cash flow to be able to weather a storm for even 3 months. And as a result of that, my financial advisor gave me second advice. And he said, you're going to have to liquidate. This was just 3 months in. And I was just really working hard because remember what my mentor told me, just if you work really hard and you do the hard things, you're going to get what you want. And he said, this is the time for someone like you to take advantage of what they're doing for small business owners, which is you can file for bankruptcy. And I was like, that is not happening. My pride, my ego, my Asian upbringing, I'm Asian, by the way, for those of you who can't see me, but I could not culturally or mentally or spiritually get behind it. I was like,
that's like accepting failure, and you're like, no, I don't want it.
No, and he said, you need to think like a business person, not like a wounded little child. And I remember him having this hard conversation with me around it. And by the way, he's still my financial advisor today because of those hard conversations. And so I had to liquidate everything. And I lost my house. I lost my business. I lost my marriage. I lost my mentor, which was my grandmother. All within 3 months, I had to shutter everything. My grandmother passed away, and she was the one that raised me. And so, but the crazy blessing, and I don't even know if this is a blessing, but is that when my grandmother died and I was going through all of this, she left me her house. But it was this old house, 100 years old, 2 bedrooms, and so I had to take my 2 little kids.
But it's a roof over your head, right?
Right. And I had to move from I literally had like this executive palatial mansion style house, right? That I had to get rid of and move into this country house, which was so humbling. And I fell into the deepest depression of my life. Literally, I spent the next 60 days sitting on the porch, watching the cars go by. And Benton, if you knew me back then, or even if you know me now, people can't even imagine me being catatonic and depressed like that. But I was. I felt like a fantastical failure. I felt like I was an awful mother, like I had let my children down. I felt like, especially since we got divorced, I was going through all of that.
Were your kids old enough to understand what's going on at this point, or are they still little?
They were pretty little. They were 10 and 4.
Okay.
So, and one day I subsisted on green tea and cigarettes, and I didn't even smoke. I had just darkened so much. I had also lost. People thought something was really wrong with me because I just withered. I was withering away. I became 100 pounds. It was awful because I was so depressed, and I'd never been depressed in my life, Benton. So I didn't know what that was. So when you're in that spiral and you don't allow people to be around you to help you, you don't even realize that you're actually hurting yourself and have no idea that you're doing it. And finally, after 2 months of this, my daughter, my 10-year-old, comes out to the porch and she taps on my shoulder and she says, "Mommy, you're Jen Kem. It's time to wake up now." And I think she was just sick of the fact that, it was like they were eating peanut butter sandwiches. And, just she had moved into mom mode. My poor 10-year-old child, had to fend for herself and her sister while mommy was catatonic on the porch every day, just staring at the cars for 2 months. And that moment of my daughter tapping me in the shoulder and reminding me who I was, that was the moment that I shifted everything. And, I rebuilt my life from there. So I don't know if you want to go into that next, but that's what it was. I lost everything. I didn't have $1 to my name. My mom gave me a $5,000 loan. And from there, I rebuilt my life.
My goodness, that is, as I think about those type of situations, the thing that's really going through my head is, like, regardless of what had happened in your business, you were still you, and you still had all of the same inherent value as a person that you had while your business was successful, even after it failed. But yet when you're in the moment and you're in the middle of that, sometimes that's impossible to see. And sometimes you end up telling yourself stories that actually don't align with the reality that you are still a human being with value and with worth. And doesn't matter what's happening in business, like, you are still good, and everything about you is still there. It's still in place. So I really appreciate you sharing that. Especially, I feel like, I don't know that, things have gotten like 2008 yet, but I feel like there are a lot of people right now who are finding themselves in crappy situations. And I think there are probably a lot of people who are, going through their own poop moment right now as we speak. And so I really appreciate you, going to that place with our listeners and sharing that story. So take us now. So you have this moment, your daughter helps you wake up and helps remind you who you are. And now you go into this rebuild phase, and you get intentional about what you want your life to become and what you want your career to become. Give us the I guess kind of the Cliff Notes version of how you went from that moment to where you're at today.
Yeah, I went back to the basics. And I think that's such a, whenever you're in the dip, in the dark, in the bottom, and I love what you said about realizing that your value has nothing to do even with the money or the prestige or the things or anything, and go, if you get back to the nuts and bolts of your value, that's what I returned to and said, what's my value in the working world? Like, what are the things that I can contribute and help and support that I would also get paid for, right? And it came back to, I'm really good at identifying ideas, bringing them to market, and branding them. And so I realized, but I also remember that moment that why I left in the first place was I didn't have any freedom. And so I said, how can I get the best of both things and still be me? And it came down to, I can be a consultant. I can, and I knocked on Verizon's door first, and they were thrilled to have me back. They were like, you're available? Even though everybody was hurting in that time, especially retail and real estate, even big companies like Verizon were also suffering. They were laying off people. But actually, consultants, coaches, any service providers or training types did very well during that time. And so, especially if you had experience. And so they brought me back on as a consultant, not as an employee, which was my desire. And it turned into, they still are one of my biggest clients in my company, and put me on retainer, and the rest is kind of history. From there, that was back in 2009. Mm-hmm. And between 2009 and today, I've, created this brand company where we go and we strategically help companies like Verizon. But then I started feeling like, when I was in that space, when I was in my poop moment, when I lost everything, there are other entrepreneurs and small business people that don't have this. They don't have this, because I didn't have a community around me. I didn't have people that I trusted, but it's because I wasn't allowing myself to trust people. And I realized that was one of the biggest reasons I failed. And so that's how I started helping entrepreneurs do the same. So I have both kind of companies. I have the big companies, and then I have the small companies, and two different companies that help them. And it's because I learned from my poop moment how I could serve the world in a bigger way, but still retain my values and my value, right? And that's exactly what I did. And I had to learn that very expensive, painful lesson to get resorted and relook at how I could help. And now I'm proud to say we have a very successful enterprise, and I learned to trust and have great people around me, including financial advisors, who tell me, knock it off, girl, you're getting your own way, like it's, grow up. And, I think when we're scared, we go back to that wounded child, that wounded moment. And we need people who care about us to say, I see you, I empathize with what you're going through, and I want to help you, And so that's what has happened for me.
Thank you for sharing that story with us. Most of our audience are either entrepreneurs, marketers, or we do have some filmmakers as well who follow us. For that group of people, what would your number one piece of advice for them be?
So no matter what the economy is like, so this is, and to be future-proof of your brand, always have what I call both sides marketing in play. Okay, what I mean by that is you need to have an offline component and an online component. So offline meaning try to keep your overhead low, but definitely people love what I call belly-to-belly conversations. They want to meet in person. They want to, and right now, or, at the time of this recording, we're in a pandemic, but I will tell you that that's not going to stop us from wanting to be together. And so that's one, when we talk about Starbucks, people want to go to Starbucks so they can have their coffee and they can have their ritual, right? And so offline rituals help build your business, even if you have an online business. And then vice versa, you need to have an online leveraged way to create revenue for your company. And too many times we either do one a lot, like only online, or we only do offline. And I believe in what I call both sides branding strategy to create marketing for both and build both. So that's my number one thing. And that's also how I've created a very profitable company since 2008.
Now, why do you call it belly to belly instead of face to face?
Well, because I think that people want to have real conversations with real people, and face to face sometimes feels like we have to put on an identity or a surface to, especially how people hate networking. I do. I hate networking, but I really love belly to belly conversations, I call them, which is just like this podcast is doing. Let's really, what's driving you? What motivates you? Did something, I'd love to hear what's happened in your life that's motivated you to be in service in this way. Because if you're a small business owner or an entrepreneur, you are one of the bravest people on the planet, okay? It's a lot easier to have a job than it is to be an entrepreneur. And so you have a special mission in life to that helps other people and get paid for that. And so what I mean by belly to belly is just having real conversations, like true from the gut.
Get past the small talk, get past the surface level stuff. Got it. Awesome. How can our listeners stay in touch with you and follow you?
So I'm over at JenniferKem.com, and also on Instagram. I have a lot of I love Instagram. So if you're an Instagram person, follow me at Jennifer.Kem. And then my Facebook business page, we do a lot of live streaming and just to support small businesses. So you can just search for me on Facebook and you'll find me there.
Got it. And Kem is spelled K-E-M.
Correct.
Awesome. Jen, thanks for coming on the show. It's been so fun to get to know you. Thanks for sharing your story and your experience and your wisdom with our listeners.
Thank you so much, Benton.
For our listeners, you can always check out our book, From Poop to Gold, if you want to learn more about the creative culture that we've created here at Harmon Brothers. And please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you on the next one. As entrepreneurs and small businesses, we all kind of reach that point where we know we've created something awesome and we want to share it with the world, right? And it's that very next step that can oftentimes be really intimidating or really scary, or you just don't know where to go next, right? And the beautiful thing about this 14-day script challenge is you get your hand held from, okay, you have this cool product, now let's go research and find the exact way to present it and message it to the world in a way that resonates and gets people excited and they're ready to swipe their credit card and purchase. And in the 14-day script challenge, you get the opportunity to go through that step by step with our writers who have done it dozens and dozens of times.
You actually watch us go through each of the steps ourselves and create it with a real client, a real product, and it's a real campaign that's out there that's been very successful.
That's right. And the feedback that we've had on this thing has just been phenomenal. I mean, we get comment after comment and emails flowing in from people all over the world who have just raved about the impact that this has had on their business.
People tell us over and over again, it is just a huge value punch for the investment for this 14-day script challenge, and really gave them the tool set they needed to walk through it and make it happen.
And we've had dozens of students who have successfully taken the challenge, written their script, launched their ad campaigns, and driven success for their business. It's pretty amazing.
For more information, go to hbros.co/script. That's hbros.co/script.